Well, good evening, everybody. So happy to have you join us. We're really excited to be with you this evening. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes just to allow people to make sure we have everybody who wanted to join be able to log in, and then we'll get started. So just hang tight for a few minutes and then we'll get rolling. But again, welcome.
Welcome and thank you. Okay. Nick, should we get started?
Yeah, it looks like we've got about 84 people on so far,
Huh?
Renee. Yeah, why don't we go ahead and get started?
Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Renee Hardman, and I am President and CEO of LSI. Been here for about 14 months. And I would just want to, first of all, start off by saying thank you for being here tonight. I know you have plenty of places you could be and doing with the nice weather that we have out here, but we appreciate that you are spending about an hour with us for us to give you a bit of the landscape of what's going on in resettlement services and how it affects our organization. But before we get started, I want to share with you that LSI is 160 years of age, and we have been around doing the work of serving Iowans for that long, and we're so proud of it. We have services outside of resettlement services that include early childhood, foster care and adoption, disability services, clinical services, immigrant and refugee services, and of course, we have Global Greens, which is part of our immigrant and refugee services program. We are excited to be able to share some information with you. This webinar will include, it will start off with two real life stories of two different journeys of newcomers coming to Iowa and the impact that they're making. But we could have 1,000 or so people on this webinar sharing similar stories, but just a little bit different in their journey. You're going to hear from the Director of Immigrant and Refugee Services, Nick Wirtz, a person that I am so excited to work with and does such a great job in this space and has built this program from the beginning until what it is today. And then we'll talk about some calls to actions, and then we'll end with questions and answers, and we'll try to provide answers, I should say. I will tell you that we are having this webinar because we started our 2025 year off with some challenges. On January 24th at 6 o'clock p.m., I received a letter from our provider, Global Refuge, who is our grantor, indicating that the federal government issued a stop work order for resettlement services. And of course, having read that letter, I called Nick right away. He was on his way home, and we talked about the letter, and we knew that it was fairly serious, and that it is. And later, we've learned that the new administration has put a halt on resettlement services. But we had some responsibilities for the newcomers that were coming over here, legally vetted refugees, for their first 90 days of service that we were contracted to provide. And that involved 191 newcomers that were in their 90-day period. We currently have 500, I'm sorry, we currently have 390 so employees, but we have 35 to 40 employees that are in the resettlement work that is impacting their ability to continue to do what they do. But we at LSI made a commitment that we were going to continue to serve these newcomers that were in their 90-day period, and I'm so proud of that. We made that decision even in light of the federal government not willing to pay their 1.5 commitment to work that we already had done in the months of November and December and January. So we're praying and hoping that one day we'll see that commitment that we entered into and services that were rendered. But as of today, we have not. But for the if it were not for the generosity of supporters, congregations, churches, businesses, and individuals, we would not been able to have committed to serving that 90 days for these newcomers that are here in Iowa under our care. So I wanted to start off by just explaining how we got here and how we're navigating this path, how we're navigating this challenge, and how we're still staying committed to honoring what we said we do for newcomers, but yet we serve about 3,000 refugees throughout the year, and they are still in our care with services that we provide maybe outside of the resettlement business. So let's move into sharing, and so you can get a little bit of an insight to how resettlement has impacted at least a couple of the lives that we wanted to lift up here today. The first one is you're going to hear from Imal Hotek, who is a case manager, has been with LSI for 2 years and a couple of months, who has such a neat story of how he helped the U.S. during a time of this need in Afghanistan, and how he is his journey to the United States and what he's doing now. So, Imal, would love to hear a bit about your journey.
Good evening, everyone. I hope that you had a great day, and thanks for joining us. First of all, I would like to introduce myself and share my story. So, my name is Imal Hotak. Originally, I am from Afghanistan. I started working with the U.S. Marine, U.S. Army, and other combat unit as an interpreter from 2008 to 2014 in my home country, Afghanistan. So during these 7 years of service with the U.S., my role was to do the training for Afghan National Army, Afghan police, and in U.S. weapons, vehicle, education, and other military equipments, and would go mission patrol to provide operation and interpretation support. I have a countless letter of recommendation from the hiring officials in the U.S. Army Force for the service. The following end of my contract in 2014, I applied for the special immigration visa, which is a special visa granted to those who life are at risk for their service to a U.S. force in Iraq and Afghanistan. I applied and granted the SIV status and came to the U.S. in April 15, sorry, to the to the U.S. Refugee Resettlement Agency. Initially, I work in the manufacturing job, and I built security before becoming a team leader at Menko Window for 5 years, from 2017 to 2022. In 2022, I started working with the LSI as a full-time Afghan interpreter for Dari and Pashto language to assist with the Afghan allies who were evacuated and that the LSI helped resettle in Iowa. After a year's employment at the LSI, I promoted to the case manager to support the learning and integration of another Afghan evacuees who are settling in the community. I achieved my goal. I created becoming all my family member a U.S. citizen in 2021. And also that was my goal because, before I come to the U.S., that was my goal to become U.S. citizen and, to buy a house, which I did. And I'm very, very happy. And the other goal was, to, for my children, to get education and in US, which is I'm very, very happy, and all my children right now, in the school, and I'm proud of them. So my wife's statement is, since I was refugee, and my goal is to help people who are coming new to the United States, because I feel them. It is very, very hard. It is not easy, when people coming, those people, they doesn't speak English, or they're not familiar, with the area. So it is very, very hard, for all of them. So I'm very happy, to enjoying help them who are, they are coming here. So thanks again, for joining us, and I really appreciate it from your support. Thank you.
Gosh. Thank you, Amal. We're so proud of you and your journey and the life that you're living and what you did to serve our country and how you helped our country when we were there and how you're paying it forward. So you're an inspiration. Thank you.
Thanks.
The second inspirational story that you'll hear is from Vin Nguyen, who is an individual that is an education program manager here at LSI, has been with us for 3 years, has worked in the Des Moines public school system for many, many years, but leads his life here as a leader in this community, in his own community, and the things that he does to help others succeed based on what he's gone through is a testament to who he is and his character. So, Van, would you share with us about your journey as a refugee here?
Well, thank you, Renee, for your kind remark. Thank you very much. And I would like to say thanks to all the audience on the webinar tonight. This is a very critical town hall meeting that LSI put together. I appreciate that effort, Renee and Nick. Every single refugee, every single immigrant has a story to tell. They share their struggle, they share how they overcome their struggle and how to adapt to the new country here. So tonight I have truly a privilege to share with you briefly about my journey to America and what it meant to me as a US citizen and former refugees, what we call boat people. I was born and raised in Saigon, the South capital of South Vietnam, in a family of 10 brothers and sisters. With a large family settings, I'm the youngest boy and also the 9 out of the 10. With that, we, brother and sister, we have very close knit. We have close relationship. We develop our strong bond. We learn how to work with each other and how to help each other. Especially our mom have taught us how to help others. Soon after the war in Vietnam, with the fall of Saigon in April 30th, 1975, my family decided to stay put in South Vietnam because we still have a couple of brothers was in the war and they have not been home yet. So my mother and my father decided to stay put. So we live under the new regime. The life in the South changed very rapidly and completely as the new government tried to put practice into communism and socialism in the South. My parents began to see the changes, and they fear for my future growing up in a new region. They finally decided to smuggle me out from Vietnam to seek for freedom and basically a new opportunity for a young man so they can grow and prosper in the new conditions without being fear that I could have died in the big oceans. But my parents decided to take the risk to smuggle me out. So I was smuggled out from Vietnam along with 134 people. So we have 135 people on the little teeny tiny boat. I was on the third layer of people on that boat. It's a very tiny boat, a little, not even worthy to travel out in the oceans, but we did. Out in the oceans in the Gulf of Thailand, we encounter many rob, rape, piracy, humiliations I would say, to the worst. We also encounter and endure thirst, hunger for many days. We finally, our little vessel got saved by an oil tanker with a lot of difficulty, I have to share with you, but we finally got saved. 133 of us survived. One died in the oceans, and the other one got kidnapped. Um, so we were sent into Songkla refugee camp, one of the most dangerous refugee camp in Southeast Asia at the time. When I was in the camp, I got interviewed by UNHCR staff member. I finally get accepted by them as a refugees, and later on got referred to U.S. program. I was very happy and I was very excited because now USA decided to pick me up as refugees. I spent time in the camp and I was sent to another camp in Indonesia. The name of the camp was Galan 2, waiting for my sponsorship. It was difficult because a young man at the age of 21 plus to find a family to sponsor to America, it had been very difficult. Luckily, the local resettlement agency here in Des Moines picked me up and I landed to Des Moines. I have to share with you, I was excited, I was happy because finally for many months, many days, being isolated in the camps with our family member, I was excited to come to Des Moines no matter what. But soon my excitement, my happiness was gone because I began to understand with no English language skill, lack of cultural background, I was nowhere to be able to communicate with people. I struggle in communications. I would struggle with almost everything. And I had to rely on people for every single thing that I do. So come to the rescue. The local resettlement agency have helped me to find housing, put me in the apartment with the other fellow boat people, um, food, shelter, apply for Medicare, apply for refugee benefit, find job, um, enroll me into English language classes. So I started to find that particular job, especially overnight job. I used to, long ago, I worked for TGIF, and I hope some of you remember TGIF in West Des Moines. Now it's a West Bank. I worked from 11 o'clock to 7:30 in the morning and started to go to classes to learn English at 8 o'clock. But I have to pay for it because I know, I realized that the key for me to stay fresh and stay progress is to learn English, and education is the key to open my opportunity. So even through many art jobs, picking up trash, work for the hotel, Holiday Inn on 6th Avenue, many jobs that I have done and did. I enrolled myself in Des Moines Area Community College, pursue my degree there, and then went on Drake University and pursue education as my career. People were like, no, you don't speak English well enough. How are you going to be a teacher? I met the challenge. I told them, if you let me in, I would be one of the most beautiful, not beautiful, the most successful teacher for you. And truly, I was able to serve thousands and thousands students and family in Des Moines Public School for almost 30 years plus. Right now, I'm very happy that LSI I am a part of LSI family. There is no better place to be at this time, to be a member of the staff. Here at LSI, I help design curriculum to help people to learn English, to gain that some skill, job-related training, some of the skills that they learn how to adjust their new life in America. So I'm very happy with the job that I have here. But I want you to know, without the resettlement agency, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be. I would be so lost. So people ask me, why do I do what I do? And I said, why not? I mean, why wouldn't I do what I do? To kind of serve my own people through my journey, through my experience. I want to take that and really help my fellow refugees to be successful, to integrate into a new society, to be productive citizens. That is my why. And that's how I want to make sure that our refugee population to be successful with the help of local resettlement agency. So thanks again for being here with us tonight. Thank Renee and thank Nick for the opportunity to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Van. Thank you for sharing your story. And we could go on and on because it's so rich and you've accomplished so much with your life coming over to the United States and helping others. So thank you so much. We're going to turn now the program to Nick Wirtz, who is the person that has made all of this happen, is a person that had a dream, is a person that had a vision, and a person that had a heart for others, a heart for humanitarian work, and a heart to make a difference in the lives of people coming over to this country, because he could have done so much with other things, but he chose this work. So, Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you to share more specifics about where we're at, the state of affairs, a call to action, and whatever you need to share with this group about the resettlement program. So,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Renee. Thanks for the kind introduction. And thank you to Amal and Vin for sharing your stories. And thank you to all of you who are on. Just looking at the names, just it's really grateful to see how many people have showed up to get an update and engage with us from all across the state. See lots of familiar names. So appreciate you all being here. Yeah, so Nick Wirtz, Director of Immigrant and Refugee Community Services. I've been with LSI for 18 years. Yeah, Renee, I fell in love with the work when I first got here in my first year and fell in love with the families that we got to work with and to be a part of their journey. And it's really been a privilege to be a part of LSI and be a part of this important work that's a long standing work as an organization and as a state. So I wanted to share a bit this evening. I'll provide a bit of background just again on the refugee resettlement program. Some of you may know it, but I'm hoping to share it just by way of giving you some additional talking points as I hope folks will engage our federally elected officials in advocacy. And then I'll dive into just some of the impacts that it's having on our team, on the families we're serving, and on our communities. So, as Renee mentioned, we are celebrating 160 years this year, which is really, really exciting. And I always love to remind people that our organization, LSI, was founded by immigrants, by Danish and Swedish and German and Norwegian Lutherans who started children's homes after the Civil War to care for orphans. And so, it's in our blood. It's who we are. It's caring for those and caring for newcomers. Was part of our founding mission. You probably know as Iowans that we have a rich history here in the state of Iowa. This is actually the 50th anniversary of Governor Ray, Republican Governor Ray, saying yes to President Gerald Ford, who reached out to governors across the country to states who would welcome families like people like Vin to come here to the United States. And so 2025 is the 50-year anniversary of him saying yes and really making Iowa a humanitarian leader and putting us on the map as a place of welcome and a place of refuge. As a country, it actually didn't become a federal program until 5 years later. So next week is actually the 45-year anniversary of when the Refugee Resettlement Act of 1980 was signed. And it has been a bipartisan supported program across those 45 years, across 7 administrations of both political parties, and has saved millions and millions of lives of people who had nowhere else to turn. It is a legal immigration process that admits individuals who've been granted refugee status because they've been persecuted in their home country, either due to political conflicts that are happening there, or in the case of Imal, persecution because they have served on behalf of U.S. forces abroad, and have given and sacrificed themselves on behalf of the U.S. government's interests overseas. And so the U.S. selects a certain number of people every year to admit through the refugee admissions program. They are first sort of vetted and screened by the UN, and then the U.S. has their own vetting and screening process. Many wait in refugee camps for decades, and go through years of screening and vetting before they're admitted to local communities. And they're welcomed through partnerships between the Department of State and local community organizations like LSI and our network of volunteers and local employers and schools and healthcare providers. I see we have a number of folks from Northeast Iowa on the call, and I have to lift that community up because we over the last year have just restarted offering refugee resettlement services in Waterloo, and it's just been such a terrific process. So many people in that community who have, as we've gone and conducted interviews and talked with folks, and not to say, this is something LSI wants to do, but is this something the community wants to do? And so community college, healthcare providers, schools, employers, who all said, yes, this is something the Waterloo community has done for many, many years, and we want to do it again, and wrote letters of support that supported our application to the Department of State to open up resettlement services there again. So this, even though it is a federal program, it requires local commitment, and local communities have input into the process, and it truly is something that people want to do. At its core, it's a humanitarian program. So people are admitted because of the humanitarian need. They can't go home. They can't feasibly stay where they're at. But I always like to let people know too that it makes very good economic sense for us as a country. And I know that dollars speak to some people differently, but it is in our best economic interest to continue to welcome and admit refugees. There was a study just published last year that documented that between 2005 and 2019, over that 14-year period, refugees contributed a net $123 billion to our federal, state, and local economies. So yes, there is an upfront investment of federal resources as well as private and local resources. But in the long run, refugees are net contributors to our workforces, our communities, the places that we live and work and love. In 2021, LSI began getting back involved in refugee resettlement work. We restarted services in Sioux City and in Des Moines, and then in this past year in Waterloo, really at the invitation of Global Refuge, who, as Renee said, is one of our national partners. LSI and many others around the country have really been engaged in a rebuilding effort of the refugee resettlement program. As it had been diminished quite significantly during the first Trump administration. In the last year, we have helped welcome 726 individuals here to the state of Iowa across all of our 3 locations from Syria, Afghanistan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, Venezuela, Guatemala, and Honduras. We welcome each family to the community. We find and secure housing and cover housing expenses for each family until the family is working and able to cover their own expenses. And for 95% of our cases that we work with, they are economically self-sufficient through employment by the time they have been in the country for 8 months, and oftentimes much, much quicker. So I'm going to move to just some of the impacts, the actions that have happened this year. As Renee said, it's been a really, really challenging year. And I just want to lift up, part of the reason we wanted to put this together tonight was to really engage with you. You are the ones who have stood with us, who have stood by us, have supported us, long before this year, many of you, but especially in this year of challenge. And so there will be an opportunity kind of at the end here for Q&A. And so if you're not familiar with Zoom, there is a button at the bottom there that says Q&A. And so we invite you to send in questions. Your questions won't be seen by other participants. So you don't feel like you need to hang on to those questions. If you don't want to, you can go ahead and type them in the Q&A, and then we'll get to those at the end. And they can be for any of us, for Amal, Vin, myself, or Renee. But in terms of actions this year, on January 20th, there was an executive order signed that effectively halted and paused the refugee admissions program. For us as an organization, we were preparing to welcome 104 individuals over the next several weeks across all three locations, and so all of their flights were canceled within that first week. And the human impact of that is that we actually have families who had relatives and family members who were planning to travel and join them here. We have a family of 10 that had an older son who was, because he was over the age of 18, was being processed as a separate case. He was supposed to arrive in February, but his flight has been canceled, and now they don't know if and when they might be reunited. And this was after 10 years of kind of going through this resettlement process. So just really heartbreaking stories, and really has put us in a very challenging position. We don't have answers, where we're not getting a lot of communication from the federal government about if or when things might resume. And then, as Renee mentioned, on January 24th, we received the stop work order, which effectively said, the federal government will not reimburse you for expenses after this date. And we had just welcomed, we had 191 families who were still in their, first 90 days of services. 128 of them had just arrived in January. And so, just really pulled the rug out from under them and under us. And so, as Renee said, it's really only through the support of generous Iowans and many of you on the call that we have been able to continue on and fulfill our commitment to the families that we've helped welcome. In February, we then unfortunately learned the news, or heard the news from Global Refuge, that they were not being reimbursed for expenses for other federally funded programs outside of resettlement. So some include our employment services program, a special program we have for Ukrainians who've been welcomed here to the United States. A program for Afghan humanitarian parolees who've been welcomed here, and then services for unaccompanied children. Global Refuge still has not been reimbursed for expenses going all the way back to December, and therefore cannot reimburse us for those expenses. And so those are now totaling up to $1.5 million. And these contracts are still in place. Nothing has been communicated that these contracts have changed or have been paused. They're simply not paying for the expenses. And the real frustrating thing is that they are still paying some providers. There's a group of providers that are still getting reimbursed and still getting paid for these same services. But at Lutheran affiliated organizations, Catholic affiliated organizations, and there's a few non-religious organizations as well that are not being reimbursed. And we've been offered no explanation as to why. So that's put us in a really challenging position, and as a result, we've needed to make some tough choices, and unfortunately are having to wind down some of our programs, and have had to give notice to some of our team members who are working in these areas. So last week we actually had to give notice to 28 members of our team. 7 in Sioux City, 4 in Waterloo, and 17 here in our Des Moines office, who are all working under these programs and providing services to newly arrived families, but other families that we also serve throughout our communities. Our hope and our prayer is that if the reimbursements resume, we will be able to retain many of those team members, but we needed to take steps to kind of stop the bleeding, if you will, and make sure that LSI as an organization can continue to do all of the other important things that it does. The really sad part is, again, it's not a budget issue. These are all funds that Congress has appropriated for these purposes. Congress had all of these things in the budget, and again, services and contracts are established, and we were asked to provide these services that we're now not being reimbursed for. So, we really wanted to I know there's been a lot kind of in the media, we've had a lot of media coverage, and again, wanted to just provide an opportunity to directly engage with many of our stakeholders this evening. I think one of our big asks of all of you is to join us in reaching out to our federally elected officials. They are the ones who really need to be determining why this is happening, why LSI is not being reimbursed. We want to ask them to resume the U.S. refugee admissions program, because it is something that Iowans want to do. It's something that is a long and strong part of our our history, and something that's good for our state and for our communities. And so next week, Congress is actually on recess. So many people will be back in district. I don't know how many of them will be having town halls, but we'll be sending a follow-up email come out tomorrow, or sorry, tomorrow morning, with a template letter that we would like to ask you all to consider printing and sending in to our federally elected officials and to our governor as well to demonstrate to her the support that these programs have here in the state of Iowa. So there's a variety of ways you can do that. We have been told that, handwritten letters are sometimes more effective as offices are getting flooded with stakeholder communication. But we welcome you to call, to write, however you choose to get in touch. We really next week really want to just have an outpouring of people reaching out to Senators Grassley and Ernst, and then our House of Representative members as well, expressing your support for refugee resettlement programs, and asking for their support and making sure LSI can get reimbursed for the services that we've provided. So I will pause there. I'm going to turn it back over to Renee for some closing remarks before we move into Q&A.
Okay, great, Nick. Thank you so very, very much for this information that you're sharing with our important folks on this call. We just like to also lift up that, we're living in times of uncertainty. We're living in times of many challenges. There's another challenge that's looming looming at the hill, and that is about Medicaid. If there is cuts in Medicaid, that will have a significant impact on our early childhood program and the preventative services that we do in that particular area. It will have an impact on the 20 or so child care centers that are run by refugees and the children, and that do this work 24/7. These are non-traditional child care centers that provide services 3 to 11 and the night shift, so that these families can do the kinds of jobs that require them to be there at those particular times. So we will keep you apprised, but we just want you to know that we're living in an environment with lots of uncertainty on impacts that affect many folks that need it the most. We're asking that you continue to support us through your financial donations, and anything that you want to give, large or small, would be incredibly welcomed and appreciated, because we do have other services that we want to support as well. We, again, are still standing. We're hoping to be around for another 160 years. Speaking of which, we want to share with you there's going to be a huge celebration in October. A date will be coming out probably in the next 3 to 4 days. It will be an external event at the Sheraton Hotel, where we are going to celebrate the 160 years and the lives that we've impacted, and tell the stories that are meaningful to all of our stakeholders. So when you get that date, save it, and we'd love to have you come support us, and that would be very helpful to support all the service lines that we do as well. Elevate our story, share it on social media, like us, comment, tell the stories personally. All of the things that you can do to lift up and elevate what we do and how we do it is also very helpful. And it's just a click away to do that. Again, I just want to share with you that we started 2025 year with some challenges, but we're navigating them through the support of others, and we are still standing. And that's really going to be our theme for 160 years, is that we are still standing in light of. And we are not going to let any smear campaign, any tweet, any person try to hold us back. They might have us go through some trials and tribulations, but we're going to come out on the other side one way or another, because we're doing humanitarian work. We're doing God's work. We're doing what is noble, and that is being there for folks that need us the most. So with that, I think we have a few minutes left. I knew that there were a few questions in the chat here. So Ben is our IT guru. And so if you want to throw out some of the questions, Nick and I can try to answer those. We want to be responsive to the folks that would like answers to some questions. Ben, can you help us facilitate that process?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Renee. We've got a good flow here. Some of them are similar, so I'll just try to condense some of them. First one, how can the executive branch legally stop payment for these services if they were authorized and budgeted by Congress?
That's the $1 million question that deserves a $1.5 million answer. How's that? And so we are perplexed by that. We're perplexed that the federal government can ask us and encourage us to enter into a contract to provide services to newcomers to help them land on their feet, avoid the welfare system, and at a drop of a pen, an executive order or whatever they choose to say, thanks, but no thanks. So I wish we had the answer to that. Global Refuge certainly wishes they had an answer. The last call that I had with Global Refuge, who is our grantor, they were out $54.5 million because they do resettlement services and provide funding all across the country. And so they laid off 400 employees 3 weeks ago, and they're laying off more employees this week because the federal government is not honoring the contract that it even made with them. So that's why we're encouraging you to write your legislatures, write Congress, go to the town halls, ask them how can they do that? How does the government get away of not honoring, not paying their bills?
Yeah. And I will add, I know there are a couple court cases out there, and there have been some rulings. And, I've been asked, is this going to change things? And, I think we've seen a couple rulings come and go. And honestly, it's been a little challenging to follow it all. But at the end of the day, Global Refuge has still not been paid, and therefore cannot pay us. I did see there were some questions about, has LSI sought an attorney to file a lawsuit against the administration. That is not something we have done at this time. Global Refuge and a few of the other national resettlement agencies have entered into lawsuits together because they are the primary grant recipient, and then we are, and many of the other Lutheran social service organizations are sub-awardees. So I know they are taking some legal actions to try to get reimbursed for those services that again are a part of what we have done under and through them. But at this time, LSI has not taken any or entered into any lawsuits ourselves.
Great.
Ben?
Another question with Governor Reynolds' recent recognition of LSI, Lutheran Services in Iowa Day, will she be asked to use her influence with the Trump administration to seek reimbursement for refugee services but not paid for?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a fair question, and I appreciate the person that raised that. Is that we were actually on the Hill 2 days ago, Lutheran Day on the Hill, and we had over 414 people that registered for that event and came to that event to share their frustration, to share their support about lobbying the federal legislatures that represent us here in this state to ask the federal government to do what they should be doing. So we have had conversations with the governor. She has agreed that she would write a letter and on our behalf to lobby federal government to honor its commitment. So we'll see where that goes. We're going to work with her on that. Nick has agreed to provide her with some more content. We're going to do that, get that to her ASAP this week, no later than Monday. So the proclamation, and I will be just honest with you, there are people that were wondering if we should even just have this proclamation, given what's happening to us. And I want to share with you that when things go low, we try to go high, and we deserve to be recognized for 160 years of work here in Iowa, covering 99 counties. We serve 99 counties, and so we deserve to be recognized like any other company and organization. And so that is going to launch our 160th anniversary. So we have had some conversations with the governor, and we'll continue to have conversations with the governor. Our board members have had conversations with the governor, and you're free to write the governor as well and send your letter of support and asking her to assist us as well. Dan?
Great. I think you've talked a little bit about this, but what can local churches do to help LSI support families that are not receiving the services? And is it best to donate to LSI in general, or should they be specific about IRCS when they donate?
Nick, do you want to handle the first part of the
Sure.
question?
Yeah, I would say, and I maybe failed to mention this in my remarks, but again, because we had families that just arrived in January, our commitment and to those families and through people's generous support so far, many of our team members we are going to be able to retain until the end of April, and so we will be able to continue to provide kind of all of the core services that we typically provide through the end of April. And so our team is working harder than ever to make sure that people are housed and employed and self-sufficient before our workforce is dramatically reduced and we're no longer able to offer services. So for local congregations, I would say, if you are in the Des Moines, Sioux City, or Waterloo area, financial support is still a need to kind of help us with our ongoing operations as we work to fulfill our commitments through the end of April. In the Sioux City area, I know we have a few families that we are still moving into permanent housing, and so there is a need for assisting with apartment setups and potentially some in-kind donations to furnish apartments. But I think the kind of targets in all of our sites right now is really around employment. And so if local congregations or you and your communities, again, Waterloo, Des Moines, or Sioux City, have employer connections, that is really our greatest focus right now is making sure that we can get as many people employed and economically self-sufficient before the end of April. So in Des Moines, we have about 80 to 85 employable adults that we are looking for work for. In Sioux City, it's around 30, and then 10 to 15 individuals in Waterloo. So employer leads, employer connections in those communities would be greatly appreciated. We still have staff that are working with families to, again, help prepare them for the workforce, figure out transportation plans, childcare plans, work with employers around, how to maybe overcome language barriers if it's new for a particular employer. So that's probably our greatest need at this time.
Yeah. And I like to, yeah, thank you, Nick. I like to just, address in terms of donations. We are an organization that really lifts up a donor giving from their heart and designating if they choose where they want the money to go. So I'll leave that up to donors. We certainly have a need on organization as a nonprofit altogether because we have to have support staff that support the work of IRCS as well, and so any donations certainly help us try to continue to support the employees of IRCS as well. So we'll ask that you give from the heart and make that decision on your own. But whatever you do, we're appreciative, and we'll be good stewards of your investment.
Yeah, and I think that's great, Renee. And in relation to that, I think this question is great. Where did LSI gain the 1.5 million to provide services prior to the reimbursement?
It's a reimbursable business. Nick, you want to?
Sure. Yeah. So, yep, most of our work is reimbursement based. So LSI incurs expenses for services it provides, not just in our immigrant refugee community services, and then we submit reimbursements to our grantors, sometimes state government, federal government, other private funds to be reimbursed for those services. So as an organization, annually, last year we were somewhere around 32, $33 million. I might have that number slightly off, but that is sort of all of LSI services all across the state. And so it is a requirement that we keep a certain amount of cash, operating cash. I can't remember, Renee, if it's 45 days or 60 days of operating cash, to make sure that we can cash flow operations and expenses. So that is kind of a regular part of our operations and how we provide services. That we do have to have some cash reserves to be able to provide services up front, and then again, typically get reimbursed for those services shortly after they're provided.
Yeah, I think you've said it just right. I'll just supplement that, Nick, that our organization, given all of the diverse services that we do in 99 counties across the state, we need to have 30 days of reserve. I know our CFO is on the call. She'll probably text me if I'm misquoting myself. So please do. Ronnie, if you're on the call, if I've misquoted that number, but last time I think we talked is 30. And so we are using our reserves to help refugees and this 90 days and helping them succeed on this journey of self-sufficiency. Because if we don't, the state's going to need to deal with that. So, how long do we think that a person can stay without a job and no roof over their head? They become a burden to the state eventually. So, we're trying to do a service to this community and trying to do a service to the state. But we are in this business on a reimbursable basis. And normally, up until January, we got reimbursed. And so it worked out just great.
Can you share what our work will look like now that resettlement is ending for what could be the duration of this administration?
Nick, there's a
Yeah,
lot of other resettlement kind of stuff that we do. You want to share with that?
yeah, I can take that.
I
Thankfully, a
mean,
lot of our work is, well, yeah, there's a number of other things that we do within our immigrant refugee community services that is not being impacted currently. We have a number of economic development programs that will continue to operate. Our Global Greens program, which is here in Des Moines, which helps people find a way in using their farming skills, whether it's in small community gardens or starting small farming businesses. That program is continuing and continuing to grow. Our child care business development program, which has just recently expanded to 5 different communities across the state. So Des Moines, Sioux City, Storm Lake, Waterloo, and Davenport. We are continuing to work with women to start and become registered, licensed home-based providers. Just had our first provider got registered in Sioux City this last week, so we're celebrating that. And so those things will continue to move forward. We also have, a number of the programs that Vin leads. Our English classes are going to be continuing. And then we have some other programs that help individuals with home ownership, financial literacy, services to older refugees, those that are 60 plus, and some limited case management and employment services will continue to be offered. For our, Sioux City and Waterloo locations, our scope of service is going to be much smaller. Well, all sites will be much smaller, but in those 2 locations, our primary areas of service will be some limited employment services and then our child care business development programs. And thankfully, so far, a lot of LSI's other services that Renee mentioned have not been impacted. So those are things LSI will continue to do. Our disability services, foster care and adoption, early childhood, and clinical or mental health services will continue to be offered across the state.
Specific to volunteers, are we in need of any volunteers to assist refugees specifically, clothing, furniture? Also, another asked about grant writer volunteering. Are we in need of any of that? Or are we seeking any of that out right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, right now we do have some volunteer needs kind of outside of our resettlement program. So in, our English classes, our senior program, our Global Greens program here, mostly in the Des Moines area. As we get closer to the end of April, and I think one of the things our team will be working through is, if there are still some outstanding needs for families after we are kind of wrapping up services, if that's what we end up needing to do, we may have more opportunities to kind of match or mentor or match mentors with families that are still needing some additional support, but aren't quite ready to do that yet, as we're just continuing to work with families over the next 8 weeks. So we can certainly follow up if that need does become more prevalent, and once we have a better sense for where families are at by the time we are done at the end of April. And then, oh, in terms of material needs, not at this time. The only outlier might be Sioux City, again, where we have just a few families that we are working to move into long-term housing. They've still been in a hotel, short-term housing, just because it's been a bit more challenging to find housing, particularly for larger families in the Sioux City community with the flooding that they've had there in the past year. But so not a huge need at this point for in-kind donations.
Will we still be able to provide the mental health services that IRSCS has been providing?
Yes, we will. And it's actually been really exciting as an organization. A lot of those things have grown. I think Renee Jim, our clinical director, was sharing this week. We now have 37 mental health therapists all across the state. I know the team here in Des Moines has grown significantly over the last year and has really expanded to working with more immigrant and refugee families. So all of those things will continue. Although, I think the challenge that Renee lifted up earlier around Medicaid and potential changes with Medicaid and Medicaid reimbursements at the state level do have a potential impact on that as LSI, 60% of our mental health therapy clients are Medicaid clients. And so, we're watching that as well and hoping that there won't be any negative impacts to organizations like LSI and those that need therapy services through Medicaid.
Great. Another one, just one's a comment followed by a question. What fundraising initiatives are presently being organized? And a thought, if we have 1,000 donors who are each able and willing to donate $1,000, that's $1 million. We are going to do that. Let's get 1,000 squared and raise $1 million.
All right.
And the question would be, have we sought out the ELCA bishops to designate an upcoming Sunday for like an LSI Sunday?
Yeah, we have a fantastic philanthropy team, Ben and others that are still on the call, and they are getting creative and having great conversations. They're talking to the congregations. They're doing the Sunday gatherings. So they are lifting that up and aggressively trying to be at every place that they can, where they can, to share that. The churches have actually been an extreme source of support for us. I mean, it's so helpful. I can't even describe it, but they've been very helpful. So the philanthropy team is doing that. As it relates to our upcoming fundraiser, the 160th anniversary is going to be a fundraiser. There'll be an opportunity for you to buy a table, invite folks, and buy tickets and come out to support that. We're going to start aggressively on raising money for that. But that event is going to be happening in October, and the philanthropy team are going to be taking a lead and helping. They already have, and that'll be our biggest fundraiser for this year.
Renee, I think was the initial goal to raise 160,000. Maybe we should go with the $1 million goal
I think we're going to change that to $1 million. So, philanthropy team, I know you're on the call. Write that down.
I know there are a lot of LSI employees on the call. Are any of the funds donated by employees by payroll deduction able to assist and help financially the IRCS service line?
Yeah. Our employees are giving what they can. We have an annual campaign invitation for employees, and employees step up to the plate and they do payroll deduction. They write checks, so they're given to their own. So my leadership team, I think everyone on this leadership team gives to that annual campaign on a yearly basis. I certainly do support our annual campaign myself. I can't be asking others to give when I don't give myself. That's always been my philosophy. And so, yes, employees are engaged where they can. Thanks for asking.
Great. Does the anti-DEI movement, have we seen that affecting refugee resettlement at all?
I'm going to speak to just a little bit. I do think that we have to be a bit aware of the external environment as it relates to DEI. And I say it proudly because I don't think it's a dirty word. But, we were told by a funder just this week, and I'm not going to mention names, that we should look through some of our grants and to truly make sure that we're not singling out race as a predominant but focus on the need and maybe low and moderate income phrase that is more palatable. So we're going to do what we can. We are in the work of diversity. I'm going to be honest. We're working with people that are newcomers to this country. That is diversity. Whether we have it written down on a grant or a piece of paper or that we're submitting, we'll have to adjust and see how best to describe it. But I say that without trying to run away from what we do best, and that's inclusion and providing people with some equal playing field to be successful. But yeah, we've noticed it and we've seen it, and there are funders that are looking at it, and there are funders that are having some conversations with us about it. Yes.
Great message, Renee. Thank you. Are local businesses and corporations, especially those that hire immigrants and refugees, stepping up to the plate at all?
Nick, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I mean, we are, yeah, I'm trying to think through. I mean, we have had a few companies reach out in terms of financial gifts. I think our engagement around the businesses and corporations that have traditionally employed folks has just been mostly around employment. And I will tell you, it is a more challenging employment market now. And so our team is seeing, it is harder and harder to find opportunities and harder to get some open doors with employers. And so that's why I lifted that up earlier. I think, the more that we can broaden our net and network of employers, the better over these next couple of weeks. We have been reaching out. We had a meeting with actually the Greater Des Moines Partnership today, and just kind of meeting with chambers, just trying to, overturn any possibility of an employer connection that we might be able to explore and work with and make a match for some of the skills and backgrounds that people have brought here to Iowa.
Great. Thank you, Nick. That's it for the questions. I have one last comment sitting in here that's from a dear friend of LSI that I'll share. Thank you for your dedicated services throughout Iowa. You are doing God's work, and we are blessed to be a part of this critical mission. God bless.
Wow. So beautiful. Thank you for that comment. Whoever wrote it, we certainly feel the love, and we thank you for being a supporter. So we are going to keep this moving and close this meeting out. I want to close with a couple of things real quick. Tough times don't last long, but tough people do. LSI is still strong, and we're going to keep standing. And then the last thing I'd like to close with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that says, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter." So let's not remain silent. Let's spread the word. Let's write letters. Let's call legislators. Let's go to town halls. Let our voice be heard. So I thank you. We thank you so very much for this time.
Thank you all for attending. And as I said, we'll send out a follow-up communication tomorrow with a sample letter and some of those communication tools, and just would appreciate anything you can do to reach out to your elected officials on our behalf. So thank you again.
Have a good night.
See everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.